I'm Gregor Thompson, I'm a philosopher and a writer, and I know what the meaning of life is. Welcome to The Struggle. This episode is brought to you by The Struggle newsletter. This is a weekly email newsletter that I send out for free every Sunday, a short article concerning the art of embracing productive struggle. And I also send out tips, strategies, and recommendations such as movies, music, podcasts, books, and recipes to help along the way. To sign up completely for free, go to gregorthompson.com, the link will be in the show notes, confirm your subscription, and check your spam folder for your welcome newsletter, and then add me to your contacts so that you can continue to receive it in your inbox every week for free. And that's it. You're on your way to being more productive, healthy, and motivated. Now, let's get on with the struggle. This is episode 23 of The Struggle with me, Gregor Thompson. And this week I want to explore a story that we can all relate to, with plenty of symbols and metaphors relating to the struggle. So let's begin. Bilbo Baggins is a little hobbit, living a pleasant life in his little hobbit hole situated in the beautiful and lovely Shire. He lives a life of contentment and comfort, warm and cozy in his little hobbit hole. The end. If the story truly ended there, The Hobbit wouldn't be one of the most successful books of all time, and it wouldn't have been made into 3 movies. It would be a boring and forgettable story. Instead, the story continues. Bilbo receives a knock on the door one evening by a seemingly giant wizard, Gandalf the Grey. Gandalf informs Bilbo of a dragon that guards the gold and palace of the dwarves who lost their kingdom to this fire-breathing beast. Gandalf then requests that Bilbo help the dwarves regain their kingdom by sneaking into the palace and stealing the Arkenstone so that the dwarves can live in their kingdom once more. Of course, due to the fact that Bilbo has been living a life of comfort for many years, he firmly declines this offer and returns to the warm and uneventful hole he inhabits. However, that evening, another knock on the door comes. This time it is a dwarf, Dwalin, who enters Bilbo's hole and starts to eat Bilbo's dinner. Before Bilbo can stop him, another knock comes, then another, and then another. Before he knows it, there are 12 dwarves sitting at his dining table eating all of his food. Gandalf then arrives, and then the leader of the group of dwarves, Thorin. They begin to plan their daring adventure to Erebor in order to steal the Arkenstone and slay the dragon Smaug. Bilbo again firmly states that he will not be helping the dwarves and invites them all to leave. Eventually, after the dwarves sleep at Bilbo's, they leave and set out on their adventure, saddened by the hobbit's choice. Bilbo awakens to the familiar sights and sounds of his little hobbit hole. But unfortunately, he does not feel the same as he did a few days ago. He is no longer content. He can hear the call to adventure and runs to catch up with the dwarves, and he embarks on this most unlikely adventure for a hobbit to embark upon. Bilbo and the dwarves encounter all sorts of obstacles along the way, such as trolls, goblins, and the deceitful Gollum, not to mention the dragon itself. But why do we find this tale so enchanting? It's not simply that it's a fun story with lots of interesting creatures, it's because of the hero's structure that runs throughout it, that also runs throughout many other captivating stories that we as humans seem to gravitate towards. But why do we gravitate towards this hero's journey? It's an innate human trait that we are captivated by a story regarding a character that overcomes their failures, setbacks, or shortfalls and embarks on a journey with many obstacles along the way, overcomes them, and receives some form of meaningful reward at the end of it. We are captivated by this because we are driven as humans to live this life too. Evolutionarily speaking, we were first driven to this life in order to survive. We were forced to live this adventure because the alternative was death. We had to journey out to the unknown and encounter the obstacles that come with hunting for food, finding a water source, finding a mate, and finding warmth and shelter in order to survive and recreate ourselves through procreation. However, the world has vastly changed, and with it, our stories as humans and the stories we create. As humans, most of us have food and water whenever we need it. We have warmth and shelter, and mates are more available through dating apps or through pretend mates through pornography. Once survival was certain, we had to find meaning in other adventures and journeys, such as through creativity, invention, science, and philosophy. Therefore, the fact that we as a species are captivated by stories like that of the Hobbit is an innate human drive within us to replicate these stories for ourselves. But we cannot simply do this by watching these movies or reading these books. We must actually listen to the call for adventure within us and sprint out of our comfortable little hobbit hole and chase after the meaning and purpose that comes knocking at the door. This will come with struggles and obstacles. Perhaps not goblins or trolls, but you will encounter your fair share of obstacles. And these obstacles will become progressively more challenging the more you embrace struggles, better yourself, and take on greater and greater challenges. The further you tread, the closer you become to a momentous dragon that must be slain. This dragon represents something that if you were to go back to your previous self, sitting comfortably in your little hobbit hole, and if you were to think of this dragon, you would laugh in disbelief that you could ever possibly slay it. However, like Bilbo, you have shouldered your fair share of suffering and struggled consistently thus far. Therefore, you have been constantly reborn and better and stronger with each goblin and troll you defeat, and thus have the ability to confront what is needed to confront in order to find meaning and purpose. You may be happy and content lying on the couch by the roaring fire, watching The Hobbit, but truly ask yourself, will I be this happy and content when I'm looking back on this life if I didn't achieve anything of value except living a comfortable life? I hope the answer to that is no. So what is your dragon? Or how do you know what your dragon is? It's whatever you know you should be doing that you're avoiding. Whatever is so difficult that it feels out of reach, but meaningful enough that you would be immensely proud if you slayed it. It's something that requires a consistent effort, something in which obstacles must be overcome in order to even get close to it. For me, the dragon is creating this podcast for a living. I put off starting this podcast for close to a year for fear of it not being perfect. I was Bilbo at the start of his story. The idea of this podcast being listened to or watched by hundreds of thousands of people seems out of reach. But I know, now that I've started the podcast, that as long as I continually overcome the obstacles of writing, recording, editing, and marketing the podcast every week for years, it will grow, and I will eventually meet and defeat this dragon. But I know it will be painstaking and difficult, but it will also be fun. I will overcome more than I ever thought possible, just as Bilbo did. Embracing the struggle doesn't have to be depressing. It is an adventure as long as you choose the right struggle. It's a journey towards self-actualization, a hero's story. The answer lies in the struggle. So keep on struggling. Just a few more things before you take off. Firstly, thank you for watching. It genuinely means a lot to see people viewing and liking the content. Second, if you're enjoying the content, please subscribe. It's the best way you can support the podcast. As you can probably tell, I don't have a team behind me helping with recording or editing the podcast. I don't have much fancy equipment and I don't have much financial resources to keep the podcast going. So any support, any subscriber is helping the podcast grow and helping me more than you know. You can stay up to date with everything I'm doing on social media. All of the links will be in the show notes. And you can also listen to the Struggle podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And lastly, keep on struggling.